They thought he was just another confused old man. His clothes were worn, his posture slow, his voice barely above a whisper. At the Veteran Affairs office, staff exchanged looks of annoyance. "Sir, you're in the wrong place," one of them said quietly. People watched. No one spoke up. The old veteran lowered himself onto a chair, hands trembling, not from fear, but from memory. He had faced battlefields. He had buried brothers. But humiliation that hurt differently. Then the glass door opened. Boots echoed. Metals caught the light. A 4-star general stepped inside, and his eyes locked onto the old man. The room went silent, because in that moment, they realized who they had just disrespected. The Veteran Affairs office was busy, but not loud. Phones rang softly behind the counters. Printers hummed. Paper slid across desks. It was the kind of place where people waited, not knowing how long or why it always felt longer than it should. The old man stepped inside quietly. No dramatic entrance. No announcement. Just the slow creak of the glass door behind him. He paused for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the bright lights. The room smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. Rows of plastic chairs lined the wall, most of them occupied by younger veterans scrolling on their phones, some with visible injuries, others carrying invisible ones. The old man stood out, not because he was loud, but because he wasn't. His jacket was old, its color faded by time. The insignia on his chest was barely noticeable, worn smooth by decades of use. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the strap of a small file folder tucked under his arm. He approached the main counter. A young staff member looked up, then immediately looked confused. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "Yes," the old man replied softly. "I have an appointment." She glanced at the computer screen, then back at him. "What's your name, sir?" He told her. She typed, paused, typed again. Her eyebrows tightened. "I'm not seeing anything," she said. "Are you sure this is the right office?" The old man nodded. "I was told to come here." Another staff member leaned over, whispering something. They both looked at him now, not curious, but irritated. "Sir," the second staff member said, lowering his voice, "this office handles veteran benefits. Are you sure you qualify?" The words landed heavier than intended. A few people nearby looked up. The old man didn't react. He simply reached into his folder, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a stack of old documents. "I served," he said, "a long time ago." The staff member barely glanced at the papers. "Sir, these don't look like current records," he replied. "You might want to check with another department." Another whisper. Another look. Someone behind the counter sighed. "I think he's confused." A voice muttered, loud enough to be heard. The old man's fingers tightened around the folder. He felt eyes on him now. Not angry eyes, not sympathetic ones, just uncomfortable. "Please," he said quietly, "I've waited months for this." The staff member straightened. "Sir, we're very busy today," she said. "If you don't have proper documentation, you'll need to step aside." There it was. Not shouted, not cruel, just dismissive. A security guard shifted his weight near the door. The old man looked around the room. Faces turned away, pretending not to see. He nodded slowly, as if he understood something deeper than the words being said. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the chairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. He sat down carefully, exhaling as if the weight on his chest had finally found somewhere to rest. His eyes fixed on the floor, not in shame, but in memory, because this wasn't the first time he had been underestimated, and it wouldn't be the last. The old veteran sat still. Around him, time continued like nothing had happened. Phones rang, keys clicked, names were called, but for him, the room faded. His mind drifted, not to the humiliation, but far beyond these walls. Back to a time when his uniform was new, when his back was straight and his steps were firm. He remembered standing in formation under a burning sun, listening to orders that carried life or death weight. He remembered the sound of boots hitting the ground in perfect rhythm, the feeling of responsibility, knowing men depended on him. He had led soldiers into places maps barely acknowledged. He had made decisions no one should have to make, and he had lived with those decisions every day since. A young veteran across from him shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the old man. Something about him didn't add up. The way he sat, the way he held himself. This wasn't confusion. This was control. Behind the counter, the staff had already moved on. Next, someone called out. The old man didn't look up. His hearing wasn't failing. He just knew that name wasn't his. The glass doors at the entrance reflected the office lights, showing people coming and going. No one paid attention when they opened again, except the security guard. He noticed the posture first. Straight, precise, unmistakable. A tall figure stepped inside. The guard stiffened instantly. Polished shoes clicked against the floor, slow, deliberate. The man wore a full dress uniform, dark blue, sharp enough to cut the air around him. Metals lined his chest, catching the light with every step. A 4-star general. Conversations died mid-sentence. Staff froze. Someone behind the counter whispered, "Oh my God." The general scanned the room calmly, his eyes moving past the desks, the chairs, the people. Then he saw him, the old man, sitting alone. Something changed. The general stopped. No hesitation, no doubt. He walked past the counter without a word. Each step echoed louder than the last. People watched in stunned silence as he stopped directly in front of the seated veteran. The old man felt the presence before he looked up. He raised his eyes slowly. For a brief moment, two worlds met. The general's expression softened, not with pity, but with respect. He brought his hand up and saluted. Perfect, sharp, unquestionable. The room gasped. The old veteran stood, slowly, with effort, but his salute was just as precise. Muscle memory never forgets. The general lowered his hand. "Sir," he said firmly, "it's an honor to see you again." The staff behind the counter stared in disbelief. The old man nodded once. "Didn't expect to see you here." The general turned, his voice calm, but commanding. "This man," he said, "is the reason many of us are standing here today." No one spoke. No one moved. Because in that moment, the office realized the truth. They hadn't dismissed a confused old man. They had dismissed a legend. Silence wrapped the Veteran Affairs office like a heavy blanket. No phones rang now. No keyboards clicked. Even the air felt frozen. Every eye was locked on the old man. Moments ago, he had been invisible. Now, he was the center of everything. The general turned slightly toward the counter. His calm expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had hardened. "Why?" he asked evenly. "Is this man sitting here?" No one answered. A staff supervisor finally stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Sir, we believe he might be in the wrong place." The general nodded slowly. "Did you ask him about his service?" "Well, his records seemed outdated." "Of course they did," the general interrupted, "because some records were never meant to be ordinary." He turned back to the old veteran. "Sir, may I?" he asked gently. The old man nodded and handed over the worn folder. The general opened it carefully, like one would open something sacred. Inside were photographs, black and white, old unit insignias, commendations signed by names that now existed only in history books. The general lifted one document and held it up. "This," he said, "is an original field commission authorization." Murmurs rippled through the room. "This man didn't just serve," the general continued. "He commanded." He took a breath. "He led men through operations that were never publicly acknowledged. Missions that changed the course of wars without ever appearing in headlines." The staff's faces drained of color. The security guard lowered his head. The general pointed toward the insignia on the old man's jacket. Faded, barely visible. "That symbol," he said, "means he was trusted when trust was scarce. When failure meant lives." The old man shifted uncomfortably, clearly not enjoying the attention. "I didn't come for recognition," he said quietly. "I just needed help." The words hit harder than any accusation. The general closed the folder. "This office exists because of people like him," he said. "And today, you made him feel like he didn't belong here." No one defended themselves, because no excuse fit. A young clerk swallowed hard. "Sir, we didn't know." The general's gaze sharpened. "That," he replied, "is the problem." He turned to the old veteran again. "I apologize," he said, voice firm but sincere. "On behalf of everyone in this room." The old man nodded once. I know how systems work, he said. They forget. The general shook his head. They shouldn't. He motioned to a chair near the counter. Please, he said. Sit here. We'll handle everything. Personally. The old man hesitated, then stood. As he walked forward, people parted instinctively. Not out of fear, out of respect. The supervisor moved fast now. Too fast. We'll take care of everything immediately, she said, her voice tight. Please accept our apologies. The old veteran sat near the counter, his folder resting on his knees. For the first time since entering the office, he was being looked at, not passed. The general remained standing. This isn't about speed, he said calmly. It's about principle. He turned to the staff. How many veterans walk through these doors every day? Dozens, someone replied quietly. And how many of them look like heroes? The general asked. No one answered. Heroism doesn't wear fresh uniforms, he continued. It doesn't always walk straight, and it doesn't announce itself. He gestured toward the old man. Sometimes it walks in slowly, carrying memories heavier than any metal. The words settled deep. A young veteran in the waiting area stood up. Sir, he said hesitantly, addressing the old man. Thank you for your service. Another followed, then another. Soon, the room filled with quiet acknowledgments. Nods, salutes, respect given freely, not because it was ordered, but because it was earned. The old man looked overwhelmed. Please, he said softly, sit down. You don't owe me anything. The general finally relaxed his stance. This is why I came today, he said. Not by chance, by responsibility. He turned to the supervisor. This office will review its intake process, he said. Immediately. Yes, sir. And every staff member here, he added, will remember this moment. The supervisor nodded. The general then faced the old veteran one last time. If you're willing, he said, I'd like to walk you out when you're done. The old man smiled faintly. That would be fine. As the paperwork was processed, carefully, respectfully, the office felt different. Lighter, quieter, wiser. When it was time to leave, the general walked beside the old veteran toward the exit. The same glass doors, the same path, but nothing felt the same. As they stepped outside, sunlight washed over them. The old man paused. Funny, he said. People used to salute the uniform. The general nodded. They should salute the man, he replied. They exchanged a final nod. And with that, the old veteran walked away, not as someone forgotten, but as someone finally seen. Outside the Veteran Affairs office, the world moved on as usual. Cars passed. People hurried by. Life didn't pause for moments of truth. But for the old veteran, something had shifted. He stood for a moment beneath the sunlight, feeling its warmth on his face. The general stood beside him, hands relaxed now, rank momentarily irrelevant. I never wanted this, the old man said quietly. The attention, the scene. I know, that the general replied. That's why it matters. They walked a few steps together before stopping near the curb. You taught us something today, that the general continued. Not just about service, but about blindness. The old veteran smiled faintly. Time does that to people. Makes them forget what came before. The general shook his head. Forgetting is a choice. Inside the office, staff stood silently, watching through the glass. Not because they were ordered to, but because they were changed. The supervisor finally spoke. From today on, we treat every veteran like this man might be them. No applause followed. None was needed. The old veteran adjusted his jacket, the faded insignia catching the light just enough to be noticed now. Take care of the ones still fighting battles you can't see, he said. We will, the general answered. They shook hands. Not as ranks, not as legends, but as soldiers. The old man turned and walked away, blending into the crowd like he always had. Yet something lingered. A young clerk wiped her eyes quietly. The security guard stood a little straighter. The waiting veterans sat with renewed pride, because respect had been restored, not by force, but by recognition. The camera would fade here, but the message would not.